Sometimes the crowd makes us do crazy things. Welcome to Walking Through the Word for today. We're in John chapter 19, and we're in the middle of Jesus being sentenced to be crucified. He's been having conversations with Pilate. Pilate's been looking for excuses not to crucify him. The crowd is continuing to chant and get crazy. They have become fanatics, if you will. Remember, the definition of fan in a sporting event is fanatic, and that is that they have become fanatical, they've become obsessed, they have become emotionally involved into a situation. And if you've ever been to any type of sporting event, you know how easy it is to get caught up in the emotion of the event. A certain song comes on in a football game, or a certain play happens or something, and suddenly you can go absolutely bonkers. I remember going to a Red Sox game a number of years ago, and we get to the seventh inning and they start singing Sweet Caroline. I'm going to confess to you right now, I'm not a big Neil Diamond guy. He's just not my guy. But man, I was in Sweet Caroline. I was going nuts. My kids that had no idea what was happening were going nuts. We got caught up in the emotion of the situation. It's exactly what's happening here. Remember, this crowd of people that's witnessing what's going on, that would have heard what's happening, these very likely would have been many of the same people who earlier in the week were throwing down their cloaks and saying, "Glory to God in the highest. Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Yet here the tide has shifted. They have allowed the crowd to work them up, and Pilate is sensing what is going on. And in verse 12 of chapter 19, Pilate tries to set Jesus free, but the fanaticism, the Jewish leaders keep shouting, "If you let this man go, you're no friend of Caesar." Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. Well, this is in many ways the straw that breaks the camel's back, because as we've talked about, Pilate is a political appointee facing a lot of political pressure. He certainly doesn't want to have the label of not being a friend of Caesar placed on him. He knows that the religious leaders would probably make good on this. They want to get their way. So finally, Pilate brings Jesus out in verse 13, sat down on a judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover, and it was about noon. And Jesus says, "Here's your king." Pilate says, "Here is your king," he says to the Jews. And they shout, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" Pilate says, "Shall I crucify your king?" And in an interesting turn, showing how determined they are, the chief priests answer, "We have no king but Caesar." These religious leaders hate the Romans, okay? They loathe the Romans. They would love to see nothing more than the Romans be cast out of Israel forever. Destroyed, as a matter of fact. They have been looking for the Messiah that was going to do this political general of a Messiah that was going to come and was going to make Israel, Jerusalem, the seat of the world. And everyone else would be underneath the feet of the people of Israel. This is what they were looking for. This Jesus certainly didn't fit that mold. Not only that, his words and his actions were undermining everything that they had worked their entire lives to establish and protect. So they hate Jesus to the point that they are willing to debase themselves to say that we have no king but Caesar. Wow. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. Incredible hatred from these religious leaders, from these chief priests, from these leaders that claim to love God, and yet the hatred that they hold is deep. Hatred to the point that they're willing to compromise on their own things so that they can continue to live the life that they want to live. Now, it's easy to point the fingers at these guys, but we do the same thing, don't we? We look at the things that we are comfortable with, and when God calls us out of these comforts, we like to ignore. We like to try to argue with God. God, no, this isn't what you really want. But this would cost me this. This would cost me that. We compromise. We compromise because we are like these men. comfortable. And we don't want our comfort taken away from us by a God who knows what life to the full really means. Okay. Next time, the crucifixion of Jesus.